Welcome to the Multifamily Investor Nation podcast. I'm your host, Whitney Elkins Hutton, Director of Investor Education here at PassiveInvesting.com. And I'm excited to have a returning guest with us here today, Nick Stageberg. Nick, welcome back to the show.
Thanks. It's always a pleasure to be with you.
Well, awesome. And so, Nick, I am so excited to hear about your property, Mandolin Place, 72 units in Austin, Minnesota. But before that, for listeners who are tuning into you for the first time, tell us a little bit about how you got started in multifamily investing and where you're at today.
Yeah, so I have kind of fun origin story. I had a whole career in technology, had some successful tech startups, and kind of built a real estate portfolio on the side, building or buying one house, one year, two houses next year, four houses next year, kind of like a retirement, plan or something like that, as people often do. And then, one day the real estate thing became my main thing. And so now we have a real estate private equity firm with over $1/3 billion in assets under management. And so we do single family, multifamily, and we love to just create value for for our investors, for our residents, for our communities that we serve, by buying properties that maybe could use some TLC and making them beautiful again. So just a very quick background on us.
Awesome. Well, and you and your wife are partners, which is highly unusual in the space,
Mhm.
and you have kids. And
So
you
many
just,
kids.
I know, and I think since the last time we spoke, you had another one.
That's right. Yeah, baby Elijah was born here just a few months ago. He was born like a few days before we closed on Mandolin Place Apartments. Had to schedule the closing around baby Elijah's birth. But yeah, we've got 5 kiddos, and my wife Elaine is my full partner in the business. The joke is she raises the money and I spend the money. Uh, I have a bachelor's degree in ministry and a bachelor's degree in computer science, and then she's a Mayo Clinic trained psychiatrist. So we just love serving people, in whatever ways we can. And yeah, we love having babies. We're not done yet, I don't think. We'll get to at least a half dozen. I was actually just looking at Sprinter vans right before our call. I'm about to outgrow the minivan, it feels like, and I don't know what that is. Is that a good thing? Is it a bad thing? It's definitely some high water mark though.
Well, let's dive in. Mandolin Place, 72 units, Austin, Minnesota. When did you close on this property and what was the purchase price?
We closed out in October 2024. So this deal is hot off the presses, and we purchased it for $4.2 million.
Okay, so that figures out to about how much a door?
Let me pull up my calculator here and make sure I'm getting this right. So 4.2 million divided by 72 units is $58,000 a unit. So this is a LIHTC Section 42 income restricted community that was phasing out of that income restriction period. So it's about 30 years old in a smaller market. So Austin, Minnesota has a population of about 26,000 people, and pretty much every assumption you can make about that property with just those few data points is almost certainly accurate. This is an asset that needed some TLC. We bought for a very low purchase price, and yeah, pretty much every assumption you can make about the asset's likely accurate with just those data points.
Well, how did you find the property? Let's back up the timeline a little bit.
Yeah, so this was a broker relationship, and that's where we get a lot of great deals. This is a tougher asset to market. It's not a sexy asset by any means. Lots of remediation that was needed, lots of resident issues and stuff. Difficult property to tour, had significant vacancy. Financials were pen and paper financials. We got handwritten financials from the seller on this deal. And so it's a difficult property to run through like a full-blown marketing process. So a broker that we'd closed multiple deals with before, including another LIHTC deal, which anyone who's listening to this podcast, if you've never done LIHTC Section 42 income restriction, the riches are in the niches, and there's not a lot of people out there who will buy LIHTC deals. So we love occupying a niche. Anytime we see a niche where there's a barrier to entry, we love to explore those things because we often find great success there, and there's certainly an opportunity to serve. I grew up in Section 8 housing myself, and I feel like I really understand these people. And it's just an incredible gift, privilege that my wife and I have to serve these people, and to serve in a way that I wasn't served. When I lived in low income housing when I was a child, uh, there's not that many buyers out there for these assets. So when a broker has a LIHTC deal that comes their way, there's not a lot of people for them to call, and they're difficult properties to market. So got a call from the broker saying, hey, you bought my last LIHTC deal. Would you like to buy this one? And I think there were probably two other buyers, prospect buyers that were there. We all kind of showed up at the same time and did a property walk and submitted offers. So it was like a kind of like a 1 week marketing process. And I think the broker did a great job soliciting a top offer. Ended up getting an offer at I think, close to 5 million, like 4.8 million. My offer was 4.0 million. So I wasn't even close. And I said, yep, if you got an offer at 4.8 million, you need to run with that offer. I told the broker, I'll be honest, I don't think you're going to close on that number because I can see the issues just walking around here. And when this other buyer figures that out, I think that they're going to want the price to go down or they're just going to bail out altogether. And the broker said, yeah, that's probably true, but I'd be remiss not to pursue it. So I said, absolutely, give me a call. I joke that I'm a terrible poker player. I like to put all my cards on the table and see what the best hand is we can make amongst us. A lot of brokers will do, sealed bids and have all these game theory things. I think that's just nonsense. I'm like, hey, four is my number. I'm guessing I'm the low number, but not by a whole lot. But I'm good for it because I've closed with you before. So give me a call, when the seller is serious, at a number close to there. And so that was in May, where it was like kind of that 1 week marketing process. And then in July, I got the call from the broker and I literally picked up the phone. And I'm like, hey, man, so I guess that offer didn't work out. He's like, nope, went exactly the way we thought. I'm like, okay, great. So, what's the number? And the other buyer, I think, was at like 4.4 million or something. Eventually, the seller and I agreed to 4.2 million. And we agreed on like some terms to kind of make that work. There was significant vacancy and repairs needed. And basically I gave, we walked all the units. I have a former NASA engineer who likes to do property inspections in his spare time just for funsies. He owns multifamily properties and just a really fun guy. And so anytime I buy an apartment building, he comes out and does my inspections. And we put together a 100-point list of remediations that were needed. We said all these remediations need to be completed before closing, and then and it was hundreds of thousands of dollars of repairs and improvements that were needed to the property, and then we put together a $50,000 rent guarantee escrow, which a lot of people are on this call are maybe unfamiliar with. Very common tool that I use, not a super common tool, but a common tool that I use. It's a somewhat common tool in commercial triple net leasing. So if you buy like a commercial strip center and there's a vacant bay, the seller might escrow some funds at closing to guarantee the rent for like, say, a 1 year period of time or something like that. And when you place a tenant successfully, that's refunded, and your incentives are aligned because you want to fill the bay because that escrow is going to run out at some point. Seller wants you to fill the bay. They might be helping you out with that process. And during the contract period, if they can fill that bay, well, they save the money. So we use that exact same concept with multifamily buildings. I think it was at like 80% occupancy when we first got under contract. And this property was not advertised on the internet anywhere. So we gave them a few pointers on how they could maybe market the property better, convert leads a little bit better, brought them a few leads. I think we got it up to like 90% occupancy prior to closing. And then the seller guaranteed 100% occupancy at certain rental rates and stuff like that. And then did not quite get through all the remediation, so we bumped up the escrow to 70,000 and said that rent guarantee escrow now needed to also cover any remediations he had not yet completed. But every step of that way, like he started at that like 4.8 million number. And I'm really happy with what we got. The seller spent hundreds of thousands of dollars prior to closing. I think that net, I probably ended up at about that 4 million number that I originally quoted, but the seller was happy that he was getting a bigger, top line number. He really wanted a certain top line number. And then we did everything we could to just support him to get that number. Basically, we just aligned our incentives. So kind of a creative negotiation process to get to that 4.2 number with some somewhat unique terms to go with it, and it's worked out really well. It's been a real win-win deal, I think, for both of us.
So that, thank you for kind of explaining how you were able to get your price, his terms, or his price, your terms.
That's right. Yep. Name your price or name your terms. That's right.
So, but I'm curious, how did you actually write that all out in the contract? Like as you're going back and forth and trading paper, I think that's what, some people that are trying to get into the multifamily space, they're like, whoa, if they don't accept my price or my terms, like how many times do we go back and forth? Like how many times is this person going to stay on the other end of the phone, until we can get this deal closed, right?
Yeah, so I'm a licensed real estate agent. That's actually a big part of our business. So I represent us, and I will I'll draft our agreements. I'm actually looking up the agreement right now. Um, we have a different approach to all these things. So when we're offering on a, we're closing on a $20 million deal here at the end of this month, and that was also a deep value add deal, kind of like this one, but much bigger. And that was a more formal marketing process where it was a Northmark brokerage that listing broker on Mandolin Place was Marcus and Millichap, so very professional brokerage. Just I think a lot of people assume that the marketing and offer and contract process has to follow a certain formula, and it's not true. It's simply not true. So in that $20 million deal we're about to close on, I did a formal LOI. We had multiple, kind of rounds of negotiation on the LOI. Then we had an attorney draft a purchase agreement and stuff. With Mandolin Place, the subject property we're talking about today, it's a smaller property, an unsophisticated seller, a sharp broker, and I just drafted the purchase agreement. I used the state, standard purchase agreements as a licensed real estate agent. I have a license to those, but anyone can use, state standard forms. And they're not perfect by any means. No contract is, but they're pretty darn good. And I can typically draft one of those purchase agreements in, 10 minutes. I've written, 1,000 purchase agreements as an agent. And I find that brokers and sellers absolutely love it. It's just so simple. It's literally a, fill in the blank form. It's easy to understand. And then what I do is I'll typically do, just like an addendum to that. And this varies regionally. Can I do a screen share? This is a podcast, so I don't know.
It's a podcast.
I don't know if that works or whatever, but here's a screen share in case this is so this is literally, the state standard form, fill in the blank with all the things here. And then at the end, I put in an addendum that I just draft myself where, zoomed in a little bit too much here. Well, it's probably not working very well for the podcast, I'm guessing. But I'll just put in language just saying that the seller is going to, here we go. I finally found it. Now I stopped the screen share. I just wrote out a seller rent guarantee. At time of closing, seller shall escrow $50,000 with my law firm to guarantee rents for any vacant units and parking stalls up to 90 days after closing at current advertised rental rates. These rates are $750 a month for a 1-bed, $825 a month for a 2-bed, $875 a month for a 3-bed, and $50 per month for any garage stall. At the beginning of each month, funds will be distributed from escrow for any vacant units or stalls. Unused funds shall be distributed to the seller after 90 days. I mean, that's literally it. This is not rocket science. My attorney will then draft a slightly more formal escrow agreement that's like a 2-page document or whatever that the seller signs, the buyer signs, and then that's held at closing. Very common. That $20 million deal that we're going to close on here at the end of this month, we'll do a podcast on that one. But the seller is a nonprofit, and they really wanted there to be, we promised to take care of their people. And so I literally just wrote up a paragraph saying, like, we will restrict escalations to these amounts and these percentages for 3 years. I mean, it's almost like a handshake, right? And they're just going to sign this little 1-pager document. And I just made it an addendum to the purchase agreement that I drafted myself. And I'm a man of my word. And hopefully I buy more properties from this nonprofit in the future. From their perspective, as long as they're supporting their affordable mission, they prefer I'm operating the real estate than them, I think. And people, I think, have this illusion that it needs to be complex or sophisticated, and people have an obsession almost with complexity. And they talk about, oh, I've got mezzanine debt and pref equity. I've got 7 tranches in my capital stack. Like, we keep things painfully simple in all that we do, and it often wins us the deal. It's especially helpful on small deals, but it can be extraordinarily helpful on large deals as well. So that's all there is to it. I think sometimes people assume it needs to be super complex. Nope, just write it out and get some signatures. And it's been I can't think of a time we've ever had a problem with any of these short agreements. Like, we've never once had a disagreement where someone was like, oh, that's not what we said or whatever. Like, it just write it down, agree to it, speak clearly, and make something happen. Create mutual value, align incentives, get them what they want, and you'll get whatever it is that you want.
Well, I love the fact. I mean, I've never heard of anybody putting that, essentially rent guarantee in the rent escrow. So thank you for
It's not
sharing
common
that.
in multifamily, yeah.
Yeah.
Lender loves it, by the way, but so we get lending from regional banks, and this is an asset that's like almost a negative NOI asset. It's just so financially distressed. So the bank's underwriting to a pro forma, and I can show them the iterations of rent rolls, right? Of handwritten rent rolls, and I can show them that the rent roll is increasing through the contract period and that the seller's guaranteeing rents for a 90-day period. And after 90 days, we are very confident that we'll be at this performance level. And we can show you our track record of success. We go to the bank and say, here's deal after deal after deal that we've done similar things in the past. And the bank will underwrite to our pro forma. I mean, their biggest point of vulnerability is at closing, and the seller's guaranteeing funds during that time frame. So I literally pencil in zero vacancy and full gross potential rents at date of closing, and the regional banks absolutely love it. They absolutely love it, and they see it all the time on triple net commercial deals. So the regional banks, they're accustomed to seeing it, just not on a multifamily deal.
Interesting. Thank you for sharing. I want to take a step back and get into the physical due diligence and the financial due diligence of the property. You kind of given us a little bit of an overview, but let's get into some nitty-gritty detail. You said there was, 100-point deficiencies that need to be remedied before closing, and then another, you said hundreds of thousands of dollars of deferred maintenance that needed to be taken care of. Can you kind of help us understand what that was and how does that play in, into the larger business plan of the asset?
Absolutely. So in general, it's very rare for us to ever retrade on a deal. I mean, spiritually, I would say we've never retraded a deal, and it is more common when we buy a distressed asset like this to just say, yep, we know that there's some deferred maintenance and we accept that, and that's like in the purchase price. The seller's often married to this like top line number though. So sometimes we'll need to come in and do our inspection and just point out to the seller the deficiencies that they're often unaware of. They're often unaware of. And maybe at that point they just agree to reduce the purchase price, or they say, oh yeah, we can fix all that. No matter what, I want to give the seller options. So we got under contract at 4.2 million, set the expectation with the broker and with the seller that we're gonna do a thorough inspection, and we're gonna require that they bring things up to snuff. At this point, I'd only seen vacant units, and based on the condition of those vacant units, I could make some guesses as to kind of what the condition of all the occupant units were as well, and just the things that I could see on the grounds. And so I set that expectation in advance. I think that's absolutely critical. You don't want to get someone under contract at one price and then try to like beat them up, to change it. The most valuable thing to you in this industry is your reputation. Is your reputation. Are you going to close? Are you a person who does what they say they're going to do? Like, I got the call from this broker because I did what I said I was going to do on the last deal and the deal before that and the deal before that. So we did our inspection, and it's 3 buildings. So there's kind of a lot of stuff going on there. It's through the wall AC units and central boiler heat. And my inspector went through and we attempted to fire the boilers. It was still kind of fall, so they weren't quite ready to go yet. So we insisted that they come in and they fire all the boilers. So they fire them all up, and it's a really premium redundant boiler system. Which, when you see deferred maintenance and redundant boiler system, that almost certainly means that some of those redundant parts are probably not operative, right? They switched to their failover and never replaced the original one. I could see disassembled boiler components sitting in mechanical rooms, and we said, yep, we just need to make sure that all the boiler components are operative. Well, replacing a boiler could be a $50,000 repair, easily. They're very expensive to replace. And we had I think we had a $35,000 repair on one of our boilers at one point last year. Not a replacement, a repair. And fortunately, we were able to get all the boilers up to stuff. We had a licensed third party contractor come in after our inspector. So I had my inspector come in first and identify all the things that he saw. Then we had a trade skill come in. We actually had the seller's preferred vendor come in, which I think is absolutely ideal, right? Because sometimes your inspector says something and then like the seller just disagrees with it. Like, oh, well, that's not how it is, and we've never had a problem with that, and you're making this up or whatever. So my inspector called out all these issues with like boilers and stuff. And then the seller's contractor came in. This licensed trade skill, even though they're kind of hired by the seller, loyal to that seller, like they're still licensed, and they're beholden to their own inspectors and licensing and stuff. And so they're, I mean, if something needs to be done, they're going to call it out and they're going to agree. And I'm not sure what the dollar total was on that, but it was certainly not an inconsequential sum. We flushed all the water heaters. We could hear these, huge water heaters knocking. The control systems for, they'd been kind of jury rigged to just be on throughout the winter. Whereas like the way a boiler is supposed to work, if you're running it correctly, is it modulates the boiler temperature based on the outdoor temperature. So you need sensitive, control boxes and probes and stuff like that. The sprinkler system was in disrepair, which is a very big deal. So in one of the boiler rooms, it's a dry boiler system, so it has pressurized air, and then the water floods in the event of it need to be used. So you have to keep that pressurized, and that air pump was running, that compressor was running like every 5 minutes, which is not right or normal. And I noticed it was a new compressor, which is not good. That means that it's been running so often that it burned out. And so we saw tags from a sprinkler company. We said, hey, looks like the sprinkler company's been out here a lot lately. We should probably call them and see what's up. And you call the sprinkler company, and they are generally speaking going to disclose pretty much everything, because it's all life safety stuff. And there's quite a bit of additional repair needed. $20,000 probably of various repairs and improvements needed to troubleshoot and correct these leaks in the system, and get it up to snuff. I don't know how much time you
And
want to
this,
spend on this.
and this is the fire suppression system,
Correct.
correct?
Yep, this is the
Yeah.
fire sprinkler system. Yep. So
Yeah.
you can go through each system in the building. There was a ventilation system where the air handlers were non-operative for the common areas, and so we said, yep, you just need to get those operative. And I'm a pretty hands-on person. I'm a trained engineer, and I wear sturdy clothing, and I'll get up in a crawl space and attic. I mean, in a long inspection, we'll spend the whole day there with my team, walking every unit, going through, it'll be a day with hundreds of thousands of dollars of findings. That's a really good use of my time. I know a lot of like GPs out there who say, well, I just hire a third party inspection firm, and they might even look down their nose at me that I scrape my knuckles or get my pants dirty. I try to personally walk every single unit that we buy. I try really hard. I don't achieve that, but that's my goal. My team's going through marking, on a scale of 1 to 5, or I'm sorry, one to 10 for overall unit condition, and then individual remediations needed. Like if it's a 10 out of 10, there's absolutely nothing we can do to make it better. If it's like an 8 out of 10, it needs paint or flooring. If it's a 7, it needs paint and flooring. And if something is below a 7, I must see that unit. Like that's a non-negotiable. We have to see every single unit. We have to score every single unit. We have to have extensive notes on the tenants and unit condition, every single unit. So we'll crawl over a building, a 72 unit building, for an entire day. And I'll be there personally for that entire day, participating in those, those inspections, supervising those inspections, making sure that anything that needs my personal attention is there. I'll be calling the broker, hey, pretty big surprise here. What do you think about this? Hopefully the broker is there for a good chunk of the inspections. And I think that we do a very, very thorough job on inspections, and it wins us a lot of goodwill, right? So when you're talking to the seller, if neither of you have been there, there's a different property we just closed on, and there was some hardscaping remediations, like $100,000 of hardscaping remediations. Seller is out of state, had not visited the property in years, and I recorded a little cell phone video of me with one of my team members standing on a concrete stoop playing a game of teeter-totter. There was like 6 inches of play as the stoop was moving back and forth, and I just sent that video to the broker, and I'm just like, hey man, we got some issues here. And it's like kind of playful, right? I know for a fact the seller saw this video, and this seller, they own 15,000 doors, is a very sophisticated institutional owner. But I know somewhere the disposition manager watched my stupid cell phone video of me playing teeter-totter on the front stoop of one of the units and was like, well, this isn't good. There's probably some credence to these hardscaping remediations. They're not trying to retrade us. There probably is a bunch of concrete work that's needed at this property that we have been ignorant of. So that's what we do. And we went through all the units, and we said, hey, yeah, you need to replace flooring in this unit. You need to there's an infestation in this unit. There's mold in this unit. All of these things need to be remediated. There's this deck that is falling off the building that wasn't obvious from the ground. You had to go get in the unit, walk out on the deck. You walk out on the deck, like, whoa, something's not off. not right here. That's going to be about $20,000 we're probably going to spend to remediate that deck, because we're going to peel off all the siding. That's happening like right now, months after closing from that escrow. We're going to peel off all the siding, peel off all the sheeting. There's some flashing that was missing, probably in the original construction of the building, that was missed by the original inspection, and so deteriorated wood. I mean, all the way through to the interior of the unit. We needed to get the inspector out from the city. So these are all things that we identified as part of our physical due diligence on the property. And
So I want to pause you right here. How did this play into the overarching business plan? Were you, value add is your specialty. It sounded like some of these were actually health and safety issues that needed to be taken care of prior to closing, just for your own protection in a way.
100%.
So, was your strategy on this particular property to, lease things up, or excuse me, complete the repairs and remaining repairs on the property as this LIHTC deal is expiring, increase rents? Like, what is the strategy here?
Yeah. So there's some opportunistic discovery there. So you asked about financial due diligence also. So we reached out to the state to ask about the status of the property. So in our state, it's for any state, LIHTC is a 30-year income restriction. And this property was built in 1994. So we were coming up on the end of that period. So we were thinking this thing would start the off-ramp next spring. And when we reached out to the state, they said, "Oh no, this property's already entered the off-ramp period." We're like, whoa, that's a big deal that we don't have to sit on this thing for a year. So, the seller was not aware of that, had never, probably lost it in the mail or something. I'm sure they got multiple notices and stuff like that. So they were still renting using income restrictions, and that was completely unnecessary. Now, the state's not going to reach out and say, "Hey, you can stop renting to income restricted people," they're like, because they're submitting documentation to the state that's not needed, and the state's not going to tell them not to necessarily. But we asked the state, and the state said, "Oh no, we're in the off ramp period." And there's some complexity to that, but that is a $1 million difference right there. That is a $1 million difference in property value, just that one financial due diligence item. And again, the riches are in the niches. So if you become familiar with different niches, you'll know things that other people just don't know because you're a subject matter expert in that specific area. So we were originally thinking that this was going to be kind of like we're in a holding pattern on this asset for a year before we can start our renovation, kind of a value add plan. And instead, we kind of came out guns blazing. And so we've got, 10 guys swinging hammers there right now, renovating as many units as we can, as quickly as we can, doing, kind of a light value add. So we're not doing new cabinets and counters and stuff like that, or at least light value add for us, because some of our projects will spend $50,000 a unit in renovate. I mean, we'll do insane, deep value add to assets. In this case, we'll probably spend, about $7,000 per unit. So paint, flooring, faucets. That was another diligence thing. Was we figured out, this is a small town. We figured out that the electrical inspector is also the rental inspector in this municipality. And so you better not ever do anything to a multifamily property without an electrical permit. So normally we would swap out sockets, switches, fixtures, and stuff like that. We're not going to do that here because the rental inspector is very, detail oriented when it comes to those items. But we'll replace, hardware, door handles, fixtures, cabinet pulls. Normally we would, replace appliances like stainless steel. We're not going to do that in this case because this is kind of a lower income community. Even though it's not income restricted anymore, it's still a lower income community, and it's unclear if we'd be able to get a rent premium for that. And in this community, there's an extraordinary demand for housing. Rental rates are kind of low, but there's still very low vacancy, which I know sounds kind of weird, but it's a lower income community in this, and it's also a very blue collar community, home of Hormel, which is a food processing company. So think, working in like a meat packing plant. These people do not care about stainless steel appliances. They care about having a clean, safe place to live where it's close to work and they can get to work and back. So we did kind of a light value add business plan, and we were able to get the seller essentially to cover a significant portion of the initial tranche of that value add plan, because they had, kind of ratty carpet that they'd been cleaning over and over again without replacing. And we said, okay, you need to go in and replace this with LVP. We even helped them, quarterback that. So we'd say, here's referrals to contractors, our preferred vendors with our preferred materials. Would you like us to schedule the installation for you? You need only stroke the check, which the seller was happy to do. And I think the seller felt really good that he was taking care of the asset on the way out. So that's kind of what that process looked like, going from the kind of due diligence, inspection remediation kind of phase to our value add phase. Is very seamless. Like, we literally already had our guys on site swinging hammers, and the date of closing, they just kept swinging hammers. Doing more now, but they just kept doing that. Yep.
Now you alluded to, and I definitely want to get into the financing piece, how you worked with the banks and, the capital raise on this particular project. But I have a burning question here. You alluded to that there was some issues with the financials on the property, aside from them just being handwritten on the back of a napkin. And I'm not
Yes.
too far off, it sounds like, from that
Yes.
statement.
That's accurate.
Yeah, tell me a little bit more. I mean, this is already a low-income housing community. There's already lower rents here. What's the financial distress on the property?
Yeah. So it's almost a choose your own adventure of distress. So, there's cockroaches, there's bed bugs, there was a fire, and then insurance, to pay for the remediation from the fire, but then your insurance goes way up as a result of that. The seller had $67,000 on their handwritten financials for taxes. When we checked the assessor, the payable for the following year is 55,000, not 67,000. That's a pretty big deal on a small deal like this. So we underwrote 55,000. But then the state of Minnesota passed a law, the state did, which changed the way taxes are calculated, the way municipalities are allowed to calculate tax on income restricted properties. And this is a very big deal. And again, that's why, there's the riches are in the niches. So in this case, we were able to lower the taxes on this property by 50% as a result of this regulatory thing. The seller was unaware of this. I think the broker was unaware of this. I don't know. I mean, seller and broker were unaware there was even the off-ramp period, right? It wasn't even an income restricted property per se. We're very familiar with this stuff. We're subject matter experts in this stuff. So not only could we start renting to market rate tenants, but as long as we hang on to as many income restricted people as we can, we will get a pro rata reduction in our taxes for the income restricted tenants, essentially, for the next 3 years through that off-ramp period. And that amounts to a 50% reduction off the 55,000 for next year. So seller had 67,000 on their taxes. Our taxes for next year will be 27,000. So that's, you could drive a truck through that. There's just an insane, kind of gap there. There was a bunch of building expenses in the seller financials. That's the bucket. I'm looking at the pro forma, $78,000. It was the largest line item on the financials of building expenses. And I'm like, what the heck is that? And repairs related to the fire remediation and just a bunch of different things. There was, $10,000 in legal, which is kind of crazy on an asset this size. And that's because there's a lot of evictions. There's $9,000 on the sprinklers because of these sprinkler issues that they were kind of, kicking the can down the road, not putting the final fix in place. They were like renting that compressor pump that was burning out because it was running so much. There was just all manner of kind of red flags throughout the financials. So we didn't throw the financials away, but we had to, also $84,000 in utilities, which we underwrote to 60,000. Like, that is such an absurd number for a building this size in our area. And I bet our 60,000, I bet we can get down to 40,000. So we can probably cut the utility bill in half. Remember, their boilers, they were just kind of running them full blast because they didn't want to, set up the control devices correctly, the probes and the temperature sensors and stuff. All manner of things with the seller financials that were just very, very questionable, and and good and bad. So for example, for management, they had $10,000 penciled in. We penciled in $100,000 for management, knowing that, and that includes payroll and stuff like that, knowing that it was going to be a full court press in year one for our team to get this asset turned around. In place financials, it was total income of 600,000, total expenses of 350,000, so NOI of 250K. At closing, we were at 300K just with our expenses, but in place income with the rent guarantee. And we're going to take NOI to probably about pretty comfortably close to 400,000. So we'll go from 251,000 of NOI to 400,000 of NOI in the not so distant future on this particular asset.
Well, let's start talking about lending because I'm curious how you work that given the state of the financials of this property and the state of the property.
Yeah. So our reputation, we've got over a third of a billion in assets under management. And I think there's almost an obsession with size amongst a lot of GPs, and I don't know if that's they're missing size somewhere else or pick whatever joke you want there. But like some people would say, you've got over a third of a billion in assets. What the heck are you doing with a $4 million deal, right? In the middle of nowhere. And I'm like, for 58,000 a door, I am all over this deal. I'm ruthless when it comes to value. And once it's stabilized, this deal is going to perform. Um, our organization so outweighs the size of this asset that the lender, the regional bank, can really kind of underwrite to the strengths of our organization. Most of our debt is full recourse debt, which is again kind of unusual for most fund managers, GPs out there. Happy to sign on it. So again, we put our personal balance sheet behind it. Our net worth is much larger than the value of the building. So the bank is saying, well, you know, even if the thing bursts to the ground, Nickney Lane can cover the mortgage, which is a privileged position to occupy. But for any listener out there, let's say that your net worth is not so high yet, you can probably go buy a distressed quad where the bank is going to do the exact same underwriting. That's exactly how we message it to the bank. We say, hey, what's the replacement cost of this thing? We're buying this thing for 25%, 35% of replacement cost. I think we're doing okay there. Literally, if it burns to the ground, we come out ahead, $10 million. We're not going to burn it to the ground, by the way. We go to the bank and say, look at our track record of success, where we have driven success. We will go take the bank out and tour properties where we've done this exact same value add plan before, show them the before and after financials. We'll do the same thing with the appraiser if we need to. Members of my team will often meet, bankers or appraisers, but I'll go out personally if I need to, if it kind of needs that personal touch. These are big negotiations, and then we can typically get the bank to underwrite to our pro forma. So we can get the bank to underwrite to that 400,000 NOI, not 250,000 NOI. There's some additional negotiation that goes with that. So they'll typically, give us like an IO period for their benefit, not for ours. Right? Because they need to make like a DSCR minimum from like a regulatory compliance perspective or bank policy perspective. We'll put an interest reserve in there. So many people are unaware that this is a thing. A bank will give it to you if you ask, but they'll never offer it to you unless you do. You set aside a certain amount of money that makes the payments on the loan. So the loan that we got on this was a very favorable loan. It was $3 million. So we got a 75% LTC loan on this thing out of the gate at 6.25. A very favorable loan on an asset that's honestly specious that it should be eligible for debt in any way, shape, or form. Like Fannie Freddie would not touch this thing with a 10-foot pole. And they're really underwriting to us and our ability to make those payments. But we ask for an interest reserve where, let's say the asset's not able to make those initial loan payments for the first 6 months or something like that. We set aside a certain amount, and that's actually baked into the loan size. I know that sounds kind of crazy that you get a loan to make payments on your loan, but very common in construction loans for ground up construction. That concept makes sense in new construction because those units aren't constructed yet, they can't generate income yet. Again, we just apply that to a different circumstance, right? Banks are accustomed to seeing interest reserves on loan proposals because they do lots of lending on new construction. Well, we just do it on existing construction, and that allows us to get really favorable loan terms. We also will park money there, depository business. That's typically 10% of loan size or something, at least at closing. They know, I think we have like 20 million in liquidity right this second. So they know there's a huge amount of depository business that's up for grabs. And they are desperate to win our business on that big chunk of depository business. So we can kind of give them a taste of that, so to speak, in conjunction with the loan. And then yet another layer to this is we had another small apartment building, a $2 million apartment building where the financing was maturing. And this is kind of a small loan. It's less than 5 million. Like it's sometimes hard to even get bankers' attention on some of these smaller loans unless you go to like a really small bank, and then those have some drawbacks sometimes. So what we said was we would use the same term sheet for this other asset that's stable, that the loan is maturing, as we would for this. Now, this is critical. It's two separate notes, and there's no cross collateralization. I can't emphasize that. Never, ever, ever cross collateralize. That is how you create a house of cards. So every single one of our assets is a silo. If one asset went down, it has no ability to take down, the whole fund or the whole portfolio. So I made that very clear. There's zero cross collateralization. However, you can essentially write, same rate, term, LTV, all these. So that gets us above that 5 million kind of hump. That's a little more interesting to like a larger bank or whatever. And so there's a big bag of tricks there essentially. And then usually I would use like a loan broker. In this case, I did end up closing with that loan broker, but when I called the loan broker, he's like, "Yeah, this is a little bit, out in the middle of nowhere. A lot of banks are not going to want to write a loan on this at all because it's in a smaller market. I don't know if I can get a competitive term sheet here." So my loan broker gave me that feedback, which I really appreciated. So I personally reached out to many of our existing lending relationships. So a bank that already has, $20 million in loans with us that are in good standing, that are performing well. That's a bank that's way more likely to write us a loan on this particular asset because again, they're really underwriting us, not the asset. So those are just a few of the, I don't know, highlights that goes with that. We were able to get extraordinarily favorable financing. Our business plan is to buy something, get you a cash out refinance, and then execute the cash out refinance to return capital to our investors. I think we'll be able to get to a cash out refi in a single year on this asset. I think it's going to be a real home run deal. But the lending, it's one of the most challenging components of doing deeply distressed deals, especially deeply distressed deals that are in smaller markets.
I have so many more questions, and we just have a few minutes left on the podcast. And so let's kind of rapid fire through the last set of questions.
Sure.
Did you raise capital for this deal?
Yeah, so we put this into our Secure Freedom Fund, which anyone can go to securefreedomfund.com and learn more about it, or go to blackswanteam.com, our main website. We pay a 10% fixed rate of return. And it's like other pref equity funds out there. It's not rescue capital. This is the only asset that's in that fund. So that's a huge difference in terms of the quality of asset that your money's going into. It's new deals, not recapitalizations. There's no other LPs or GPs. It's just the Secure Freedom Fund owns this asset, and so those assets, they need to deliver a 10% cash on cash rate of return for it to make sense there. So we did raise capital for it. We fronted the cash ourselves, and then basically backfilled that capital in the Secure Freedom Fund after closing, just to. Well, first of all, because it's really expensive money. That 10% is really expensive, so I don't want to like pre-raise that money and then maybe the closing falls through and whatever. And then we have the cash, which is a privileged position to occupy. But I would much rather do it that way from just a capital efficiency perspective, and then just from a safety perspective as well. We know that our investors are getting into a really, really safe capital stack. So it was $1 million cash to close. We got it for 4.2. We got a loan for 3, so it was 1.2 million cash to close. And we'll spend some cash along the way on renovations, not too much. So we just took the 1.2 million cash from our own personal money, put it in the Secure Freedom Fund, and then reimburse ourselves. We raised the money afterwards, once the deal was closed and the deal was de-risked for our investors.
And so correct me if I'm wrong, what I heard you say is that the plan was to do a refinance, but at the end of the year, are you exiting out the investor then? Or are they getting their capital back and staying in the deal?
So historically, we've always had kind of two different deals that we offer for many years. One is you stay in the deal forever, and you get all the profit from the deal until you get a full return of capital, and then a 50-50 split. And then we have kind of a second structure that we've always offered. It's like a nice bookend to that, where you get a 10% fixed rate of return. You can request redemption anytime, and then there's no upside or downside or anything beyond that. So some people really want that safety, security, certainty of the 10% fixed. Other people want that kind of long-term hold, upside potential, whatever, of the 50-50 split deal. And that was actually a point of complexity because we had Fund 4 open at the time, which is the 50-50 split deal, and that was mostly filled, but not yet completely filled when this deal kind of hit our pipeline. And this deal was not going to go into Fund 4. Fund 4 was already kind of fully allocated at that point. So we had to be really careful. We never did like an email blast or a social media post on Secure Freedom Fund. We just kind of quietly, like you're already having a conversation with someone about Fund 4, and they're like, I'm not feeling too certain about things right now. Okay, well, great. Would you like a 10% fixed rate of return? And it was a small capital raise. It's $1 million. So it was kind of interesting. We did kind of like a soft launch on Secure Freedom Fund for this particular tranche of financing to avoid investor confusion. But that's how we've approached that, and it's been really successful for us over the years.
Awesome. Well, Nick, in wrapping up, what did you find easy on this deal that you thought, quite honestly, would be harder? And then I think we have a lot of ammo for the second part of the question, which is, what did you find that that was harder that, quite honestly, you thought would be easier?
So site management is the thing that has been easy that I thought would be harder. So the deal came with a site manager, and we always, just as a matter of policy, offer a probationary offer, a 90-day probationary offer to any site staff that come with the deal, just to give them continuity, just to make sure that they're not left in the lurch. And sometimes the site staff are not good, and they're the reason why the deal is distressed, and it's usually distressed in some way or another if we're buying it. Uh, I remember when I first, her name's Michelle. I remember I met her, and she's a very plain spoken, blue collar woman, beautiful soul. I love Michelle. And I'm like, hey, how's your day going? She's like, not very good. And I'm like, why? And she's like, dead cat in the garage. And I'm like, oh, interesting. So what happened to the cat? She's like, what do you mean what happened to it? I'm like, is the dead cat still in the garage? She's like, no, I threw it away. And I'm like, really? How'd you throw it away? She's like, with a shovel. And that tells you all you need to know about Michelle. Like that's Michelle, and like she does the hard, gritty work. She's very straightforward, very plain spoken. I love Michelle. She's been a phenomenal asset to our organization. She just needed better support, better financial resources, logistical resources, technological resources. I mean, they had very limited computers and so forth. Uh, and I love it whenever we can kind of help site staff get into a place that they love. But remote market, small asset, site management is really difficult on these sites. And then site maintenance is even harder still. And so Michelle, she's a gritty woman. She has been doing 90% of the site maintenance. She's doing our lawn and snow. We bought her a plow truck and a zero-turn mower and stuff like that. She loves it. She loves going out and running the 1 ton around, plowing the sites. It's snowing right now as we're recording this. Lawn and snow, very difficult things on smaller sites like this. So finding Michelle, she's just amazing. Just someone with the grit to do all that hard work that frankly there's not a lot of people out there who are willing to do that hard work, and then still having the grace and the interpersonal skills to kind of manage the tenants and stuff like that. And she's running the show there on 72 units by herself, doing basically all the maintenance and the site work, just killing it. So that was something that I thought was going to be like kind of the hardest part of the deal with site management, and Michelle's just been amazing.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for sharing your time, knowledge, and expertise with us today, Nick. If listeners want to learn more, how can they do so?
Yeah, so anyone can go to blackswanteam.com, blackswanteam.com, and you can click on connect, and anyone's welcome to block 15 minutes on my calendar if there's anything I can do to provide you with value. My wife has a coaching program that's absolutely phenomenal, has an 88% renewal rate on her coaching program. We've got lots of happy investors. You can sign up for the wait list for the next tranche of the Secure Freedom Fund when we get more. It's not open right this second, but it will be here in a few months. When more acquisitions kind of come into our pipeline. That's the 10% fixed rate of return opportunity. Sign up for our mailing list. We're doing a commercial lending webinar masterclass later this month that I think this podcast will come out in time for, that you might find valuable, or check out the replay on our YouTube channel. Anyone can go to blackswanteam.com and check all that out.
Awesome. Well, again, Nick, thank you so much for sharing your time with us here today. We look forward to hearing about your future deals.
Awesome. Always a pleasure, Whitney. Thanks.